Welcome back everyone. In this session we are going to learn your poem Geography lesson. This is a poem written by Zulfikar Ghosh. In this poem the poet discusses three major things. First thing is how everything looks from great height. And the second thing is the logic behind geography on the civilization. And the third thing is a question to himself on why people hate each other. Let's look at the poem. Can you imagine what your city would look like if you saw it from 10,000 feet above the ground? Neatly planned and perfect in proportion, like a geometric design. It would strike you as something very different from what it actually is while you are in the thick of it. So when you look at your city from a height of 10,000 feet, it looks like a geometric design. It looks very proportionate and beautiful. Okay, but when you look at it very close from the ground, it doesn't look so good. It looks very haphazard and unplanned. But when you look at it from a great height, it looks very beautiful. Geography lesson is a poem written by Zulfikar Ghosh. The poet travels in an aeroplane and he takes a look at the city from a great height. As the plane flies higher, the poet feels that the city has developed as per the necessity and not for the plan. And he also feels that whatever looks very haphazard from the ground is unavoidable from the sky. When the plane reaches 10,000 feet, the poet feels that the city has grown along the rivers and valleys because people are attracted towards land and water. When the plane rises 6 miles up, the poet sees more of water than land on earth, and he also understands that the earth looks round. And at last the poet is left with one unanswered question of why people hate each other. Now let's look at the poem. Geography lesson. When the jet sprang into the sky, it was clear why the city had developed the way it had, seeing it scaled 6 inches to the mile. So when the poet was travelling in an aeroplane, he was taking a look at the city. From that height, it was very clear that the city had developed according to the necessity. Okay? And it had scaled 6 inches to the mile, which means each mile looked like 6 inches from the sky. There seemed an inevitability about what on ground had looked haphazard, unplanned and without style when the jet sprang into the sky. So when the jet took off and started flying in the sky, it seemed that whatever that looked very haphazard, very confused and unplanned on the ground looked very inevitable, which means unavoidable when looked from the sky. When the jet reached 10,000 feet, it was clear why the country had cities where the rivers ran and why the valleys were populated. The logic of geography, that land and water attracted man, was clearly delineated when the jet reached 10,000 feet. So, when the jet was flying at a height of 10,000 feet, the poet was able to understand that cities had developed along the rivers and the valleys were very highly populated. And the logic behind geography is that men are attracted towards land and water because they help in their survival. So the poet was able to understand this logic from a very great height. When the jet rose 6 miles high, it was clear the earth was round and that it had more sea than land. So now the flight reached a height of 6 miles high. Okay, from that height the earth looked round and there was more water on the earth than land. But it was difficult to understand that the men on the earth found causes to hate each other, to build walls across cities and to kill. From the height it was not clear why. So now the poet is thinking that from a great height he is able to understand the logic behind geography, how civilization developed and what are the reasons for it. Okay, but the poet is having an unanswered question that why people are hating each other, why they are finding reasons to hate each other and why they kill each other and why they construct walls in between the countries and why they demark each other from a great height. This logic was unanswered to the poet. Find 3 or 4 phrases in stanzas 1 and 2 which are likely to occur in a geography lesson. So some phrases that are likely to occur in a geography lesson are: the city had developed the way it had, it scaled 6 inches to the mile, cities where the rivers ran and the valleys were populated. So these are the kind of lines that you normally see in a geography lesson. Okay, so when you read geography, you would have seen that cities had developed near the rivers. It's very common, right? Those kind of lines you would have seen in geography. So that is what we are dealing here with. The city had developed the way it had, then it scaled 6 inches to the mile, and cities where the rivers ran and the valleys were populated are the lines that are relevant to this question. Seen from the window of an aeroplane, the city appears. Mark the right answer. So how does it appear? Okay, as haphazard as on ground, as neat as a map, as developed as necessary. So what did we learn from the poem? How did the poet feel when he looked at the city from a great altitude? He felt that the city had developed as it was necessary, right? So that is the right answer here. The right answer is as developed as necessary. Okay. Which of the following statements are examples of the logic of geography? There are cities where there are rivers. Cities appear as they are not from 6 miles above the ground. It is easy to understand why valleys are populated. It is difficult to understand why humans hate and kill one another. The earth is round and it has more sea than land. So if you look at this, the correct answer is there are cities where there are rivers. It is easy to understand why valleys are populated. The earth is round and it has more sea than land. So these 3 are the statements that show the logic behind geography. Mention 2 things that are clear from the height, not clear from the height. So from what we learned, what are the things that are clear from the height? Why the cities are developed near the rivers and why valleys are populated. And then from a height, the poet is not able to understand why men fight with each other, hate each other and kill each other. So let's look at the answers. From the height it was clear why the country had cities where the rivers ran and why the valleys were populated. It was also clear that the earth was round and that it had more sea than land. From the height, it was not clear why the men on the earth found reasons to hate each other. It was also not understandable why men had to build walls across cities and why they had to kill each other. We are at the end of this session. Meet you soon in a fresh one. Until then, take care.